Welcome to the Built for Brilliance Roundtable. I'm TereZa, Lolli, and I'm the moderator. This is brought to you by Aries Tech and Biohack Yourself Media. So here we are, we bring together the pioneers from medicine, performance, technology, and design, and we're going to start understanding what happens when we start engineering our environment to optimize our biology and really engineer the spaces, right? So now we understand what it's like to eat healthy, drink filtered water and hydrate, right? Move our bodies, manage stress. But the next level is really understanding the invisible inputs that are happening to our bodies. And did you know that the average child sleeps in a bedroom with 5+ EMF devices? You can feed them all the glyphosate-free broccoli. But if you put them half of their lives with EMF poison, it's not going to work out. So we're going to introduce everybody and their bios, quick bios, and then we'll go into Q&A. So we have Gary Brecka. Everyone probably knows him, but I'm going to introduce him, the visionary human biologist, biohacker, longevity expert with over 2 decades of experience, a storyteller, a speaker, and the host of one of the most popular podcasts out there called The Ultimate Human. He's wearing the shirt. Gary has actually personally transformed lives of many CEOs, athletes, and everyday individuals. Thank you. And he's also starring in our latest documentary called Shield, She Healed, and he's gracing the cover of Biohack Yourself magazine. Next up is, you're not here, it looks really good. Josh Bruni, CEO of Aries Tech, a very passionate innovator at the forefront of EMF protection and wellness technology. Thank you for the work you're doing. A devoted husband and father, he blends science and entrepreneurship and purpose to make everyday environments safer for families worldwide. And he's also starring in our Shield documentary. Dr. Dogris is a neurotherapist, inventor, and a pioneer in brain optimization technology. As a founder of Neurofield, he's dedicated to advancing non-invasive brain health solutions. It's amazing. And he actually tested my brain, and we're going to do all the non-invasive stuff. Thank you. Let's introduce Sarah Baumler, who's a designer and a hotelier and an entrepreneur, known for her refined aesthetic and grounded elegance. She brings beauty, balance, and innovation to everything she creates. Michael Chandler is a renowned athlete, UFC fighter, devoted husband, and a proud dad. And you're also a speaker and an entrepreneur. Anthony Lolli is a serial entrepreneur, a real estate mogul, and a filmmaker, best-selling author, and a co-founder of Lolli Brands Entertainment and editor-in-chief of Biohack Yourself Media, as well as Dr. Dan Rubin is a pioneering naturopathic oncologist, known for blending cutting-edge science with holistic care. He is a dedicated healer on a mission to empower patients with personalized paths to wellness and longevity in natural ways. Thank you. All right, so first up is Gary. Gary, so how does home architecture and environment influence stress response, nervous system regulation, sleep, focus, brain states, and recovery? And as we were at your home, we saw very, very profound EMF-protected areas. So you take this very seriously. Talk to us about some of the innovations in home design that's available.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you bring that up. I'm actually sitting in my house now with no furniture anywhere in my entire condo because I'm doing exactly that. I got all of the VOCs and outgassing furniture, carpets, other things out of the house. But what's really astounding is if we just took a step back for a second and we looked at the areas of the world where people are living the longest. So, before I start to believe in what man makes us, I really trend towards what God gave us. And the more we focus on what God gave us and less on what man makes us, the more we'll find the secret to extending health span and extending lifespan. If you were to just scan the blue zones, you would notice that there was no continuity between diets, right? So it wasn't a hardcore dogmatic diet that extended life. There were never zones in the world where it was keto, carnivore, pescatarian, vegan, vegetarian, raw food. All of these diets, regardless of whether it was Sardinia, very high carbohydrate consumption, or Singapore, very high meat consumption, or the Mediterranean, very high fatty fish and oil consumption, they had one common theme. They were all whole food diets. But what was really interesting was there were 2 non-negotiables. across all of the blue zones. And this is true in all of the extended life areas of the world, which are centered right around the equator. You know, I was a population mortality expert for 20 years, and we knew that the longest life expectancies on Earth were centered right around the equator. For every 20 degrees, what is it, longitude or yes, latitude that you went away from the equator, there was a precipitous drop in life expectancy until when I was born in 1970, the shortest life expectancy on Earth was a true Eskimo, right? They were centered at the poles. Their average life expectancy was 56 years. But the two non-negotiables were a sense of community and purpose and mobility into later in life. And now what you see is our spaces are not being designed around offices and sports bars and drinking and sitting. They're actually designed, you know, people are converting offices into biohacking rooms. We're seeing biocentric lighting come down to, you know, the cost that everyone can afford. We're seeing volatile organic compounds, things that are, you know, think of the average baby mattress that's sold in America has 14 toxic compounds that outgas for 14 or 18 months. And I'm talking about things like formaldehyde, benzene, methylene chloride, tolurenes, the polyfluoroalkyls that you find in your waters. And we lay our young infants on these mattresses and we wonder why we have skyrocketing rates of asthma. So there's a lot of focus in design, destination wellness. You have a hotelier on your panel. She'll tell you that we're leaning towards non-VOC environments, conduit-laden electrical systems that don't have the same level of EMF emission, biocentric lighting that doesn't flicker and create EMFs. And truly what it is it's getting us back to the basics. Right. I mean, the blue zones they were back to the basics. I mean, they had a sense of community. They had a sense of purpose. You see a lot more round tables for dining. You actually see that designers are looking at the elevations of windows in a home. A 6-inch elevation on the western side of a home will increase ambient lighting from the outside to the inside of the home by 80%. Just a 6-inch elevation in the top sill. A 4-inch reduction in the bottom sill will increase evening light by 40%. So our environments are now focused on sunlight and the outdoors and bringing the outdoors in. We're focusing on filtering our water, filtering our air. You know, we have HEPA and carbon filtration now. I actually took an extra step and added UVA and UVB filtration. So we negate to think about our environment as a place where we spend so much of our time, you know, laying on a polyethylene mattress that outgasses 8 hours a night. And we spend a third of our life laying on our mattresses. You know, I just finished a 3-day detox challenge. I don't know if any of you participated in that. We had about 75,000 people on there. And we did this test called a vibrant wellness test. And it's a urine test. And it looks at mold, mycotoxins, heavy metals, parasites, viruses. It looks at all of these toxins that creep their way into our bloodstream and eventually spill over and cause symptomology. And I think without a single exception, people were awestruck by the amount of bisphenols, glyphosate, tolurenes, the things that are in our bloodstream that are coming from our environment, the part of our daily life that we're just not thinking about. What are we sleeping on? What are we breathing? What kind of light is entering our eyes? I mean, these are blue light glasses. They're not readers. I use red light, so I don't actually wear readers. And, you know, we find that the research on longevity is also getting back to the basics. You know, why does red light therapy, for example, work so well? Well, red light therapy mimics the beneficial wavelengths from the sun. You know, 70% of our circulation is not done by our heart. The majority of people think that our heart circulates all the blood in our body. It doesn't. It circulates 30% of the blood in your body. So the question is, how does the rest of the blood circulate? How does the microvasculature circulate? It circulates through an activity called vasomotor. Think of a snake swallowing a mouse. It's not driven by pressure. It's driven by a muscular activity, a wave-like motion. And that depends very heavily on light. We're photovoltaic beings. So the further we get from Mother Nature, the less connected we are from Mother Nature, the less connected we are from each other, the sicker we become. And, you know, the one thing that we knew in the mortality space, and I can tell you this as a material fact, is that if you wanted to cut somebody's life expectancy in half at any age, you put them in isolation. We had syndromes when we would predict life expectancy called caregiver syndrome or broken heart syndrome. These are true metaphysiologic syndromes. You have a couple that's married for 40 or 50 years, one passes away. You can expect a very short period of time the other spouse to pass away, not because of anything physiologically changing in their body, but the frequency and the loneliness actually destroy cellular communication. And we know this anecdotally by looking at the blue zones in the world where people are living the longest. So I think that design and interior architecture, they're leaning back towards human connection. Rooms where we can actually connect and converse rather than watch TV and drink. Bringing a lot more ambient light in from the outside, getting rid of the VOCs and the volatile organic compounds in our paints and in our mattresses and our fabrics and in our wall coverings, and getting back to simple biocentric lighting that doesn't flicker, low-level lighting at night. The simple things that you can do in your environment that don't cost you a lot of money. Under-the-counter water filtration can be under $1,000 for a good 4-stage RO filtered water system, and you can add mineral salt to your water and be right back where you would be if you were drinking from a running stream. So I'm excited to see what the future holds as there's this groundswell of interest in longevity and anti-aging and biooptimization. I'm really excited to see what designers and hoteliers and developers do to bring some of the outside, some of the simplicity back into our architectural structures.
Thank you. What are your thoughts about the EMF and EMF zones, creating that in your environment?
Okay, well, I'm a psychopath about EMF. So all of my electrical is in conduit. But believe it or not, commercial construction generally has lower EMFs than residential construction. They use a lot of concretes, wood, steels, and conduit. Whereas residential construction will use something called Romex or cabling that's in rubber. They're wood studs, and then of course there's drywall, which doesn't really shield much from EMF. I sleep in a silver-lined fabric tent. I know that sounds crazy. I can walk you back and show it to you.
We saw that. It's pretty cool.
But I have a simple PVC. I mean, it's super cheap, right? But I have a PVC frame around my bed, and I have a silver-lined sheet that goes over the top of it. It clips into a grounding mattress. I plug it into the grounding wire. Astounding the differences between the sleep quality that I get there. If you followed me on Instagram for a long time, I did that 31-day stretch where I got 31 days of 100% sleep score, and then like day 32, it dropped to like 98. That was only possible in an EMF-free environment. It was incredible too, was as we made this environment fully EMF-free, my wife's was taking supplements for low thyroid function. She got hyperthyroid the first night that she slept in this EMF-free environment. I actually called the EMF guy. I said, something's wrong with this thing. My wife lit up like a Christmas tree. She was wide awake. She was anxious at night. And he said, no, that's her thyroid returning to normal. You need to just stop the thyroid supplementation.
Wow.
Behold, we stopped it. And she sleeps like a bear. And so, I've taken slow steps in my home to add UV filtration. I have air filtration that has an ozone setting. So when we leave the house, I can run ozone gas, which you don't want to do with anything that's living that you love in the house. But we'll run ozone gas, which will actually enter the ventilation system, kill mold spores and mycotoxins. I live in the mold capital of the world, Miami, Florida. If you live in Malibu, that's the number 2 mold capital in the country. And these our environments very often are the hidden secret. I've had 200,000 patients come through our clinic system, and there are always those 70% that get better with some hormone therapy, supplementation, looking at their genes and basic methylation, cleaning up their diet. But then there's that 25% that you just can't move the needle on. Weight gain, water retention, brain fog, poor focus and concentration, severely disrupted sleep patterns. And you start to look into these people, and the majority of this are toxicity entering from outside, coming into the body that doesn't show up on a normal lab. Mold and mycotoxins, viruses, heavy metals. Heavy metals are a major one. Parasites, and then less commonly viruses. We looked at the whole class of autoimmune disease, and 82% of all autoimmune disease affects women, not because it's gender specific, because women tend to be more selfless and less engaging in self-care. They develop something called caregiver syndrome, where they always put the needs of other people before the needs of themselves. So they very often find themselves in a backseat to their spouse or to their kids or to their career. But second to that, you see that this toxicity that enters the body. We found, in the majority of Hashimoto's cases, 85% of all autoimmune is idiopathic, meaning it's of unknown origin. I don't believe anything is of unknown origin. I just think that we need to find out what triggered, what called the immune system there. Well, guess where heavy metals love to hide? In the thyroid. And guess what happens when you call antibodies to the thyroid? You have Hashimoto's. Guess what happens when your gut begins to, when you get leaky gut and you disrupt that single cell layer that protects our inside environment from our outside environment, one cell layer. You have leaky gut, and now you have contents from the luminal area of your gut in an area of your body where they don't belong. It calls the immune system. Now you're told you have Crohn's disease. Helminth parasites burrow like a corkscrew into the myelin sheath of the nerve. It calls the immune system to that nerve, but you're told you have multiple sclerosis. And I could go on and on and on through all of these autoimmune, but these are coming from our environment. We think that because we have clean water and sanitation, that we've won the game on longevity, and nothing could be further from the truth. In the United States, we're ranked 66th in the world in life expectancy, below several sub-Saharan South African nations that do not have clean water and sanitation. But you know what they do have? They have whole foods, they have sunlight, they have grounding, they have breath work, they have sense of community, they have sense of purpose, and they have mobility into later in life.
That's awesome.
I feel like I'm just eating everybody's face, so I'm just going to stop for a second.
No, that was very, very educational.
I think
you always have so much to...
Michael Chandler just passed out.
No, that was great. And, this just makes you understand how important is the environment, but yet nobody's really, really talking about it. And I want to come to you, Josh, right? Why is EMF, why do you think it is so overlooked?
I think it's invisible. I don't know if it's on. Can you hear me? Yeah, I think because it's invisible. And I think it snuck up on us. I think, and I think there's I always tell people, I think EMF had a bad PR agent. The moment that you start to attack, and go after cancer and say it causes cancer, and if you go back in time, that's where they started. And you're never going to win that. And I think it's just suffered from that ever since. And, to Gary's point, when you look at some of these communities and civilizations really, really far back, the idea of energy in the Earth's energy and all of that really was a source of life. And so many of the ancient civilizations understood that in a big way. And as we moved into kind of modern day and modern technology, it just was lost and forgotten because our connection to it wasn't our normal way of life. And so I think it snuck up on us. And I think, one thing we did yesterday at the Performance Institute was we spent a lot of time talking about, looking at a lot of the data from the tests that we've done, especially with fighters. And what we're seeing in the data as a trend is like a lot of our tests show this improvement over baseline. So I think where you see us start to, with Aries specifically, start to reframe the problem, it isn't really about the cell phone or all the technology. It's really just about we use the cell phone in our demonstrations because we can control the EMF and we can show you that your body does have a response to EMF and it's not positive. And so it's not about the cell phone being bad. It's that, hey, EMF is real and this energy is real and your nervous system is responding. And if you can control that, you're going to see a whole host of benefits. And that's what you see in our data. So you see the ability, if you are thoughtful about your environment and you're thoughtful about Gary already touched on a lot of different things, but if you can optimize the electromagnetic environment, the benefits that you see within the nervous system and really almost every aspect of the nervous system, which shows up in all of our tests, if you can raise that, your baseline where you're starting from is pretty dramatic. So the ability to manage the fight or flight response, to manage the friction that you introduce in your brain because of these external factors, if you can eliminate that and just kind of start over at zero, what does your baseline actually look like? Most people don't even know what that looks like. So, or what that feels like. And I think that's where our opportunity has been, isn't really about, hey, protect yourself against all of this. It is being thoughtful and strategic about the environment. And our technology does format that field so that it actually stimulates the body, has a therapeutic effect. And so it's arguably, in our data, that might be more beneficial than the idea of reducing or mitigating the negative effect, is actually the body being stimulated through EMF. And you see that with some of the devices that are out there now. But so yeah, no, we really think a lot about starting from an optimized electromagnetic environment and getting back to what I think our ancestors always knew, right? And maybe didn't even know it, but because they didn't have to think about it. And so if we can recreate that environment, that's really what we're after.
So you are that good PR agent for EMF.
I'm trying. I mean, I'm trying, right? And it's difficult because I always call it the murky mud, and there's so many bad players out there. And you guys know, in every aspect of wellness, it's fear-based. And it is a scary thing. I mean, Gary even said himself, he's a freak about this. And so it is a scary thing, and it can be, but it doesn't have to be, especially if there are solutions, there are tools, and there are behaviors that you can do to just really, like, I can't wait to talk to Michael because he engineers everything, especially when he goes into fight mode. Like, every aspect of his environment and his behaviors are shaped to produce a specific outcome. And the more structured, the less that he has to worry about something interfering with that, and he can stay focused on what he does. And so when you think about electromagnetic radiation, it's always teasing you and antagonizing you, and it's different for everybody, but it's always there, and it's always, antagonizing. So yeah, I'm looking to say, hey, EMF is real. Whether it causes cancer or not, that's not my argument. I would advise you as your PR agent to not go that route, but to say, hey, there are ways to use EMF in a positive way, and there are tools like Aries out there that can promote a healthy electromagnetic environment.
Yeah, and what I love about you guys is what you do. You bring visibility to the EMF and measurability.
Yeah.
And we had a chance to actually scan and measure the brain and the heart rate variability exposed to EMF and then not exposed to EMF. And we understand and we see how it actually creates higher waves versus lower waves. So it's very visible and it's very real. So thanks for the work you guys are doing. And yeah, maybe Michael, maybe you can touch on what he was talking about, your recovery and preparation, and how do you design and engineer your environment, your routines?
Yeah. So obviously, as a professional athlete, since I was, well, not professional, but I've dedicated my life to my craft of hand-to-hand combat since I was 14 years old. And it's always been, over the last couple of years, I've really dialed into my message being, hey, I never cut corners, I never take the easy way out, but I do want hard things and systems and processes in place that make things easier, right? Whether it's my diet, knowing exactly what I'm gonna eat, my supplementation, what I'm gonna wear to my training session, who my training sessions with, having it all planned out so I don't have to think. And obviously as an athlete, we, in the biggest and best promotion in the world, the UFC, the best fighters in the world fighting against the best fighters in the world, we're all pretty darn similar. So it's not like I'm trying to, what's gonna make a 25% increase, a 50% increase? I just wanna get even 1% better. 1% increase in my strength, 1% increase in my recovery, 1% increase in my digestion, in my supplementation. And even just to give Josh some flowers here too is as Gary talked about, that sense of community and that sense of purpose, just creating an environment in which, we're not demonizing it, right? Like God created man and man created technology, and there's no way that all of us here today would not be making the dent in the universe that we are making if it wasn't for technology, if it was not for our cell phones, our Zoom. I don't know what Gary is on right now, Zoom or Google Meets or whatever it is, but we would not be connected with him. Zoom, had man not created these beautiful things for all of us to connect. But that doesn't mean that there's not some sorts of negative consequences about it, right? And even for me, wearing it, having the one in my phone, on my headphones, the zone in every single area of my room, especially, a podcast studio like what was that, what you said, there's like 5 EMF things probably in my daughter's bedroom right now, right? So putting the zone in there, and just making, once again, like Josh said, not demonizing it, because it's a beautiful thing. This is the world that we live in, and there's so many positives to it, but we are creating these negative byproducts that we can mitigate at least percentage-wise, in order to become the best versions of ourselves, in order to make the biggest impact that we can and live the longest that we can with, once again, our community that we've created and this sense of purpose that we're creating.
Yeah.
You have to go, Gary?
I've got to run in a minute. Are you wearing the Aries tech around your necklace? I can see that. It's like,
Yes.
Yeah, Rafe, it's beaming me in the eye over here.
It's great. I did the whole brain
actually have-
scan, and
have-
we saw how it actually affects, like the EMF affects all of my brain waves and my heart rate. Actually, I'm very sensitive to it, and then we put on the Aries Tech, and it was definitely mitigated.
Yeah, I have it on all my bags, my phone, and I'm a big believer. I mean, if you can just scatter that frequency, which is all you really need to do, you don't need to redirect it, just scatter it. You really reduce its effects. But I'll show you the here's my dedication to EMFs in here. Let me open this thing up. You can see it. There's my EMF tent.
This is how serious you have to get.
Here's my wife here. She's in the hyperbaric chamber, just doing a hyperbaric session in there.
Yeah.
Wait.
She has no idea she's being broadcasted right now.
Yeah. She's in her pajamas, so I kind of wanted to embarrass her. But
Well,
thank you guys for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Very informative as always.
Great to see you. It's a pleasure to be on this panel. I appreciate you giving me your time today, guys.
Awesome.
Thanks, Gary.
Have a
Thanks,
great
Gary.
day.
Great seeing you.
You too.
Bye-bye.
So, Michael, I wanted to continue on what you said. So, give us some tips. What is that competitive advantage look like? How exactly do you design your EMF-free environment? Give us some tools.
Well, exactly what you said. Obviously, Josh and I have become close over the last couple of years, and just seeing the technology, looking at the data, constantly talking back and forth, because it's very easy if I pulled up a glass of water and I'm able to see the contaminants in it, the nastiness in it, and then even do a water test and see all the forever chemicals and see the contaminants in the lead. You're able to see what is in there and what you're ingesting into your life. The hardest part about this is, like you said, it's invisible. And some of the scariest things in the world. I mean, obviously, I'm always training for an opponent that I can see.
Yeah.
He's got 2 arms, he's got 2 legs, I see a target. He's maybe a little bit taller, he's a little bit shorter, he's a little bit stronger, he's got these strengths, he's got these weaknesses, but I can see him. He's tangible. He's an opponent that I can see. But when it comes to the EMFs, we are relying on the data. And as more and more data comes out, and as we shed a light on it, and like you said, not necessarily demonizing it, because Aries would cease to exist if the message was, hey, everybody throw your phone away, everybody throw your computers away, everybody turn your lights off. Like it's not going to happen.
Sure.
And also, there's so many benefits to this beautiful technology, right? But just
Evolution. We're going through an evolution.
we're going through an evolution, and it takes time, energy, effort, resources, people with a purpose, and people with a plan, and people who care, people who truly want to see this beautiful world that we have created continue to move forward in a less toxic environment, right?
Yes.
But setting up my home when it comes to the zones and all of the special areas of my home. All of my children have the Go on all of their headphones, any devices that we might be traveling with, in all of the extra EMF areas of our home. Like I said, my studio, I've got all the different cameras and all the different monitors and all the different Wi-Fis and all 2 different Wi-Fis going in, plus all the Bluetooth that's set up. Just making sure there's a couple. And do I know if I'm doing it exactly right? Should I have 2? Should I have 3? Should I have 4? Should I have them on the ceiling? Should I have them on the floor? I'm not exactly sure. But every time I look at it, even sitting here, there's this certain sense of comfort just by seeing it, because I know I'm at least taking a step. And part of life and part of becoming the best version of yourself is just putting in a certain amount of effort, right?
Yeah.
And as we learn more and more information, as more and more data comes out, as more and more people talk about it and shed light on it, we'll continue to dial in exactly how we should be doing it. As we talk, Josh, what was it? Minnesota Timberwolves?
Yeah.
Timberwolves, right? When I remember you actually told me about that prior to it ever happening, and I was like, well, wow, that kind of sounds like a long shot. That's crazy.
Yeah.
You're gonna make it an arena with EMF protection in it, and then here we are, right? And now we're talking about designing spaces, actually creating a lane and creating a conversation where let's not just create a space, let's create a space with EMF protection in mind. So these are just really, really cool conversations in the community and the advancement of moving forward. And to me, it inspires and gets me pumped up because that's kind of what I've always done. I know I've got a short window of opportunity to do the most I can with the gifts that God has given me. And the more steps I can take to go as long as I possibly can. I'm 39 years old, which is a senior citizen in mixed martial arts. Now I got when I get my medicals, I have to get an extra EKG and an extra brain scan. You don't have to do that yet, right? Someday you'll get there where they're like, hey, Michael, you need to do an extra this and an extra that because we don't know if you're fit to fight anymore. I'm like, dang, guys, I still got a lot of tread left on the tires. So I've just continued to create the environment around me.
Things that you're doing, the environment you're optimizing, you're biohacking.
Yeah.
And you know, when we were filming the Biohack Yourself documentary, I was asked, why do we have to biohack? This is fringe, or this is unnecessary. Our ancestors or your parents didn't have to do that. And that was my answer. I was like, what we're understanding is the environment is hacking us all day long, especially the invisible, the air, the quality of the air. You can't measure it yet, right? But with your help, we're creating these EMF-free zones, like the smoke-free zones. We're normal.
Yeah.
So I love that. I want to come to Sarah, right? And building such beautiful spaces, how do you move and transition from designing for beauty to designing for biology?
Well, I think we're starting to see a bigger transition than we were even 2-3 years ago. And we're looking at it from the building envelope instead of coming in after the fact. So for us, it's really meeting with architects and starting from the ground up about how you're going to build these spaces. And we've spent a lot of time thinking about this envelope that we live in being protected from the outside, whereas your home is like a living, breathing envelope, and you have to understand that, how air transports through the spaces, what you're putting behind the walls and in the walls, and not just looking at the finished, beautiful space. So my husband and I really spent a lot of time understanding how we can educate people that wellness isn't a solo mission, that it really is a community-focused mission. So when we're looking at residential developments, when we're looking at hospitality, which is our specialty, we're looking at ways that we can integrate this without our guests or residents even knowing. And we think that for so many years, people have looked independently as to what they need in their home, whether it be a gym or a sauna or a spa, but we need to sort of look beyond that and look to the actual architectural footprint. So when we talk about, biophilic design, what does that mean and how is it integrated without people even knowing? When we look at air quality and what we're doing for ventilation systems and just management overall of the building envelope, these are things that you need to sort of pull back and start having real conversations about at an early stage in a development. And I think for where we're going in the future, there is a lot of conversation around wellness and hospitality. And I think we're trying to come at it from a different angle. We're really, where we live right now, we live in an area in the Bahamas that is the least developed, least inhabited, but we see many blue zone principles there, multi-generational living, and we're looking at how we integrate those principles with modern science to really optimize for our guests and for our residences of the community. And I think for that build out, that to me is the future. It's not just 4 walls that is a wellness focused center or your home where you have a gym or a spa. It's how we integrate it into everyday life. And I think when you look at how we can sort of pull back the conversation, I think it's panels like this where you have all different experts, whether it be on my side from the design side or from the medical side. We need to be able to have open conversations about how we can continue to develop in the future, because right now I don't feel that we are doing it in a responsible way. And we really need to wear the sort of hat of regenerative travel. What does that mean? Not just sustainable. I don't like that word anymore. I'm like, we cannot rely on that anymore. It's like we have to put back more than we are taking.
Sure.
So yeah, I think the conversation is going to continue to grow, and I think this panel is sort of ahead of the time, but that is also what excites me, I think, about the future for travel and for hospitality in particular.
How do you actually measurably reduce the EMF in the environments that you built?
Well, we created a hotel where really we have sort of pushed back on technology. We're very fortunate that we did that. And I think for us, when guests arrive on property, it takes them a few days to start putting down their phone, putting down their iPad, pulling out their headphones, and we sort of say, this is an area where we know that's part of your everyday life, but we have gone to the trouble of sort of protecting your environment here, so that you feel that you are, I want to say, you have that opportunity to exhale, to breathe and feel like you've put yourself in a safe space. And if people can come to our hotel and realize that we are protecting them with respect to EMF, that we are, in our case, we are limiting the amount of technology on property, it is a moment that they can be, whether they're with us 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, we hope they will take those principles and practices back home to their own environment and start to see whether it's a zone that they're sitting in, whether it's their hotel room, whether it's our communal lounge spaces or restaurants, how can they integrate that into their everyday life?
Yeah. When we travel, right, hotels or even people who are renters in apartment complexes, you're literally sandwiched in between all the Wi-Fis, everybody's Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
So what do you recommend for the everyday person? What kind of steps should they take to start protecting their environments?
I think people need to start educating themselves, though. I think there are a lot of opportunities out there. There's a lot of communities, there's a lot of hotel environments, there's a lot of residences, but you have to know to ask the right questions as well. And I think it goes back, like I said, to the building envelope, whether it be how our spaces are allowing the free flow of air, the air ventilation, all the things that we're looking at for just general health and wellness in the building envelope. I don't think you realize if you're staying at a hotel that's full of mold.
Yeah.
You know, most people don't, and they're sleeping on these mattresses, as Gary was talking about, that is off-gassing, and you're wrapping yourselves in these fabulous duvet covers, and it's sort of that movement from the way we talk about with fast fashion. I'm like, it exists in the home as well, with the products that we're bringing into our home, and we don't talk about it in the same way we do when we're talking about, you know, what you're consuming every day, what products you're putting on your body, and what you're supporting in the environment. We don't talk about it like that with our homes. And I think that's something that the conversation needs to shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Dogris, when we talk about designing with biology in mind, what do we actually mean on a neurological level? And what biological markers have you seen shift when patients reduce their exposure to invisible toxins?
Well, first of all, I love what you say. It's spot on. And I think that it's so important for our environment to be taken into consideration. You know, and Josh, you're accurate when you say this snuck up on us. You know, we are in the anxiety generation now. You know, and we have a whole cohort of people that are suffering and have anxiety disorders, depression, brain fog, difficulty with concentration. They get diagnoses like ADHD, and we don't even know what that is. And as a neuroscientist and a person that's been doing this for 35 years, I've watched the onset of these technologies on our society. And I'm deeply concerned. And I'm not about fear. I'm not a fear-based person. Matter of fact, I'm fearless. You know, I want to approach it in a way where we can we go into it in a responsible way. I think that's incredibly important. And, you know, I'm an expert in the development of EMF technology. In my practice, we use the Earth-generated EMF technologies to optimize the brain and the body. And in developing those technologies, we looked at what's good and what's bad. And I did the deep dive in history, looking at healing technologies and laying of hands and all these different things that, you know, that have been done over the centuries to heal the body. And it really became apparent to me, you know, what the bad stuff was. Now, while I was doing that, you know, I developed this technology in 2003. After the birth of my son, he was born with a hypoxic brain injury. And I was living in a ranch in the Eastern Sierra that was very remote, and now, you know, no cell phone coverage, no internet, nothing, you know, and going out there, you were deafened by the silence. It was unusual. Now, having grown up in LA and going up there, all of a sudden I couldn't handle the silence. It was disconcerting. And at first I was like, what's going on with me? You know? And then I realized, wow, you're not in contact with all that stuff anymore. You know? And so, you know, when we get exposed to these kinds of EMF, our heart detects it. And that's the first part of our body that's it becomes very, very attentive to this invisible attack. When it happens, the autonomic nervous system spikes, and you go into a sympathetic form of arousal, and your body's now, it knows that something's there that's not good for it, and now what it's gonna do, it's gonna get you ready to fight or fly. Get away from it. But we can't get away from it. So you stay in sympathetic arousal. It's kind of like pinning the gas pedal and keeping the RPMs in red line. You can only do it for so long before you start to sustain different kind of damage. And that's a concern because your gut is the place where neurotransmitters are created. And when you stay in sympathetic arousal, those neurotransmitters are not created correctly. This eventually impacts the brain and creates a high level of fast wave activity that creates anxiety, insomnia, irritability. Your frontal lobe can't function the way it's supposed to. You're not balanced the way you're supposed to be. And when we're in our optimal state, we have a really nice balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic. But this is clearly taking us away from that. And, there is in my opinion, there is almost an epidemic status of problems with EMF with the current generation. When you look at college level generation right now, we are seeing thousands of cases of kids that are coming in and they're saying, I don't understand why I'm so anxious. Right? And then they're in front of the machine all day long. Their entire environment is associated with it. Their social world is associated with it. This kind of conversation doesn't happen. Right? It happens online.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole different thing that's happening here that my brain goes to a lot of different places when I think about this, because we're trying to create different ways of helping people to stabilize, helping them to become more aware of what's happening to them, engaging with technology in a way that's healthy instead of harmful.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I feel like the way you actually help the brain and rewire it, right? I think that should be mainstream. Because the understanding is starting to spread, just like red light and cold plunges blew up. I think we're at the verge of the EMF and the harmful effects, the understanding of it blowing up. So what do you recommend, aside from everybody having to wear at least an Aries necklace, like doing the minimum, the bare minimum to combat that effect? What do you think would be the next step for people to take after they're aware? Now it's like, okay, what do I do?
Well, that awareness is an ongoing process. There's not enough of it yet.
Yeah.
So the awareness level is too low, in my opinion. That needs to be elevated. So teaching about what it's, ways in which you unplug. How do you actively step away from the technology and engage in activity that is good for you? Right? I mean, we know nutrition, sleep, exercise, meditation, all these different modalities are good for you, but you have to step away. But having a device that is almost like a filtration system sitting in your house that's running all the time. Right? And it's just slowly mitigating the issue in your home, and then eventually it'll create a level in your house that is going to reduce those harmful effects. It's not just, cell phone, it's everything. We're surrounded by it. Everything around us. So the next level of awareness is what you're doing, which I absolutely love, which is creating environments that are healthy. And then bringing that to your attention and say, why don't you consider that in your own home?
Yeah.
Do you have a router? Do you use, cell phones by your bed? Do you have different things that you could step away from? Those are all really good
That's
things.
actually a good point. By the show of hands, how many people sleep with their phone in their bedroom?
Yeah.
So we got to start from this room, right? The awareness and actually taking action steps. So what I'm understanding is staying away from EMF for about an hour a day, you're thinking?
There's more in that.
Disconnecting.
As much as you can.
As much as you can, step away, wear a wearable, and then obviously maybe take time away for a month to cleanse yourself.
If I may say, think about the way Americans take holiday, right? We got 2 weeks a year, maybe. right? And you compare us to European countries and whatnot when they take much longer periods of time to engage in self-care and wellness. That needs to be something we should really be thinking about in this country, for not just for us, but for our children. You know, to teach them that mentality of how do you engage in the world in a different way that's more heartfelt, loving, truthful, honest. You know, to approach our human condition in a way that really kind of counteracts the air in our environment here now, which again is another really significant concern.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I take that very
great.
seriously.
Yes, thank you. My next question is for Dr. Rubin. We say we are what we eat, but now we're understanding that we are where we live, right? So in your world, like, what do you think that the healthcare industry should be doing and how they should be shifting their mindset to further implement this kind of awareness and actionability?
That's a great question. And the healthcare industry globally it's gigantic. And to get them to start having this type of discussion in America, I think is going to be very difficult. It's part of the reason I chose to become a naturopathic physician and not any other type of physician or a conventional physician, is simply some of the precepts that we've heard here today by some of the panelists is we are not necessarily only better because of the medications or the devices that we've created. I mean, we have high-tech surgical outfits which can save lives. We certainly have acute medications that can save lives. We have resuscitators, but that's only for little parts of some people's lives where they require that. Many people are walking around today thinking that they have deficiencies in medications because of how their physicians are approaching them, and nobody's having any of these types of conversations. I don't think that conventionally on the whole, they're anywhere close to having this conversation. I don't think they're interested in it. In fact, a lot of medical device makers, I think, would push this away because they're EMF rich. On the other hand, there's an entire and engaging movement, which we're participating in right now, which is wonderful because we have to see past this. We have to see in 3D, and we have to bring our, like you were talking about, or you were asking me, bringing our food back the way it should be. So growing in soil, eating in whole food, the precepts that Gary was talking about, precepts that we were talking about with blue zones, manufactured food, packaged food, highly processed food, we know, I think we're all aware, is bringing us further away from what we would consider health and is undernourishing our cells. If you look at the stressors that our cells are already undergoing just in terms of EMF, and if we put processed foods and EMF together just as a couplet, we're already moving ourselves towards a disease model and not towards more a health benefit model and towards that longevity space. Also, in what way is EMF negatively affecting our food? Now, that's not to even bring into the chemicalization of our food as well, and the demineralization and the denutritionalization of our food. And so we may be consuming calories, but we're not necessarily consuming the nutrients. And so you put that type of food into a cell that's stressed, and you expose that system to EMF. And now you have a huge amount of oxidative stress. You have mitochondrial uncoupling. You have conformational changes in the red blood cell. You have constricture of the blood vessels. You have problems with the heart. You have irrational signaling to the brain. And you're now putting together a construct in the body that really isn't capable of moving towards longevity or sane functioning the way that we would want it to. And it's all very simple to unravel. And I use that word a lot. I talk about my patients being so raveled up, especially, how tight they are in the midline or how their vagus nerve isn't firing well, and they're just raveled in their brain. And there are some simple things that we can do to help them unravel. And so it may be teaching them about whole foods. And nowadays, here in 2025, whether my patient be a pediatric, if it's a 2-year-old, obviously I'm talking to their parents, but if it's a 63-year-old, we may be talking also to their adult children, but the conversation about food is a lot easier than it was, say, in the late 90s or early 2000s when people didn't really understand or have access. Nobody really was familiar with gluten-free. It was kind of a weird thing pesticides and organic was like, oh, well, the nutritional value of organic food was shown to be lower than that of conventionally grown. It's just certainly not true, because statisticizers were overlooking the fact that even though something may not have as much of a nutritional value, we weren't looking at the anti-nutritional value of some of the chemicals that may have been in it. This conversation is way easier just to have about food as food was meant to be. There's been talk about what God gave us or how this earth was created, and it was certainly not created with those types of chemicals. So those types of foods aren't. Plus, also taking yourself away from a 2D screen and looking at 3D. In terms of vacations and hotels, I was the one that aggravated our family, especially when our kids were young, because I would open the safe, put the cell phones in, and we would lock, and I'd say, we're on vacation. We're here, this is what we need. Our office knows where we are. Your grandparents knows where where you are. We can put away our phones and we can enjoy. And I thought it was really important, and I talked to my patients about this too, and this is also the concept of nature bathing, is seeing in 3 dimensions. And we focus so in on a 2-dimensional screen, looking at 2-dimensional representations of 3-dimensional objects and thinking that we've been there or experienced this, but I think our brains need that 3-dimensional input and being able to focus at distances and seeing true vibrant colors and not just digital representations of colors. So this is part of what we call the resistance model of cancer care. We just have an oncology clinic, so we bring it into the world of cancer care, but art, love, genetics, human interconnectedness, remediation of infectivity, movement hours, EMF mitigation stands right at the very top of the pyramid of where we are with this resilience model. And it's all about improving our cellular communication and reducing the stress on the cells. And when there's been some talk about cancer, I feel comfortable talking about it because I've spent almost 30 years treating people with cancer. And very careful not to use the term cancer patient. Not just because it elevates the person above the disease, because it's a person with cancer, and trying to figure out why this person has a tumor with certain hallmarks that we call cancer, which tumors seek to survive in the body, which is why they can spread, which is why they can resist treatment, which is why they exist in the first place. But at the end of the day, they also seek to kill themselves, which is why if they let a malignant tumor is let to grow, it will kill the host. So they're these big dumb warriors that are constantly overcoming these challenges that are put in front of them. And the question was not really posed, but was brushed around, does EMF cause cancer? And I'm not in a position to sit and say that EMF causes cancer, but I know we're looking at associations. I cannot take EMF out of the equation in 2025 when people develop new cancers. People develop acceleration of cancers. Worsening when they're probably on paper not supposed to based on historical cohorts. And there's more and more EMF in our environment and there's more dependence on them. So Ares products are one of my favorite things to teach my patients about. I mean, we have Zone Max right in between where I sit and the patient sits, so it's a conversation piece. It's a safety piece. I have a LifeTune 1 on my computer, and my computer faces the patient, so it's a conversation piece there. A lot, and I do it also so the patient can bring it up, because for some people, EMF isn't really well understood, and especially in the first consult, there's not a lot of time maybe to have that discussion because it could be a very expansive subject for some people. But they get very curious about the devices, one, because they're amazing looking. They're artistic, they're beautiful. People haven't seen something like this. And when I tell them about what it does to cells, how this might affect cancer cells, which a very big interest of mine is frequency fields and cancer, whether or not you're looking at potential causality, you're looking at associations, or you're looking at treatment-related effects, or maybe how to treat people with electrical fields, which is a big part of medicine, and it's growing nowadays. It is a great conversation starter, and they catch on to that, and they see them around the clinic. And so hopefully that gets to your question too, but let me know if I skipped over something.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
Okay, because we're really working on the theory that says if you have sympathetic arousal, that's all the time.
Yeah.
Your body's not going to gear down. You're not going to do the housekeeping you should do. Yeah. And if you're not throwing out the toxins out of the body the way you're supposed to, and there's accumulations of those over a period of time, do you think that would create a cancer?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think it would create the potential for a cancer, and it could create a cell. That doesn't mean that that cancer cell is immortalized and lives and grows into, divides into another cell, which those two divide into 4, into 8, and you get exponential growth, and now you have a tumor that's viable, has mutational changes, evades the immune system, and has differential growth characteristics, some of the hallmarks of the tumor. Mm-hmm. And so, but the answer to the question is, could it develop a cancer cell in your body? I couldn't see how it couldn't. I think it would be a ridiculous argument to have.
Right.
When you talk about the sympathetic overload, I mean, people that are in sympathetic dominance for a long time, whether it be because they're stressed at work or at home, or there's financial stress, or their road rage, or the foods that they're eating because they're not fit for human consumption because they simply don't provide the nutrition for you to produce the enzymes capable of removing or detoxifying normally your catecholamines, your epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine in your body, and you can't remove those, and you just build them up. It's just natural toxicity. It wasn't necessarily your fault per se. But tumor cells love catecholamines.
Right.
And I like to say, well, actually no, I like to say somebody else's line. This was a Candace Pert line, but Dr. Pert said your immune system can hear everything that you think. And your immune system, which are your white blood cells, they are truly your only mobile nucleated cell, the only mobile tissue in your body. They go everywhere, they communicate with all the tissues, they deliver messages. It's an incredibly beautiful and conserved system that we're still finding more and more about. And I work in that immune therapy space. I work with cancer vaccines with a company called Immunoscene. We make personalized vaccines, so intricately know the immune networks. But the neurohormones and the neurotransmitters are understood greatly by the immune system. And when we talk about autoimmunity, I think Gary brought up autoimmunity. When we talk about cancers, which are ultimate failures of the immune system, we can't not bring in EMF into the discussion. And for instance, when you talk about stress, when you look at our space, there were 3 main architectural issues when we built out our space in 2019, and we converted. It's on a hospital campus, and so we had we could do what we could do with it. And the 3 main issues was the color green, which was my favorite color, more of a grassy, Kelly, limey type green, which is very relaxing, very healing. I think promotes trust. We stay away from red. In the medical space. Now, I'm not just in general, but in the medical space because of the blood. So the use of green, because it could reduce stress, it's very pleasant. People ask about it all the time. And our green countertops in our exam rooms and our different areas are textured too, because I wanted to bring in texture. Nature's textured. The flooring is no VOC flooring and no VOC glue. And the flooring, to me, reminded me of walking on soil. It wasn't as dark as like black soil, but we're in Arizona, and so we don't really have black soil. So it felt like a growing plant. And I know that's probably a cliche, like the naturopathic doctor with the plants and stuff, but it just made sense to me. And then the other two were bringing in natural sunlight and windows. And it was very important the way for my front desk, for my staff to be able to see sunlight, all of them. So not just the nurses and not just the doctors, but the staff at the front desk, so they weren't closed in, because their mood, I think, is, we don't want them to project certain moods onto patients, how they answer the phone. So we built out a series of windows so they could see to the outside. And then our patients are always looking at windows, like when they're in consult, because you're not looking at a wall, you're not looking at something finite, which is very stunning electrophysiologically, I believe. And so you're seeing green and you're seeing the outdoor, and you're bringing. And then the other was rounded corners. And we have one long hallway, which we put a curve on just for energy flow. And then our clinic is just circuitous. So I was just very concerned about energetic flow. If I'm going to spend a lot of time, and my staff's going to spend a lot of time, my patients are going to be there. And so that's what we wanted to do to help reduce stress when it comes.
Yeah, you mentioned something. I love how you said that you not only educate your patients about the mitigation, but you almost like prescribe it. And so
prescribe it.
that made me think about, and I want to come to you, Anthony. I have another question, but what do you think on the governmental level, right? If there was a law that passed that was an ability for a doctor to prescribe, because people always take it seriously, right? They get the prescription and it's serious. Prescribe for an Aries Tech, let's say, right? Something like that. What do you think? Is that possible? Would that help?
You know, our work with Bobby, and we're intimately involved with what's going on there. I mean, that's the height of the topic of conversation right now. It's the environmental toxins, it's the food toxins, it's everything to do with putting you in a situation where you're in a parasympathetic state and you want to be able to recover. And, you know, all the different health journeys that I've gone through, it's all been about recovery and where I can put myself in an environment that's safe, a safe space. You know, even on the battlefield, even when you're fighting, you need that time to recover. And I think we're all going out there with so much disruption, endocrine disruptors and microplastics and this and that. And the least you could do is do something to mitigate that, you know. And on the topic of having it as a topic of conversation, I know when I wear the Aries, people always come up to us because it's very attractive. And so it's a good way to get the word out there. People say, well, what is that? Well, while we're on that topic, here's this. So I think what people can do to help get the word out is actually wear it, because it's helping you and it's helping spark a conversation.
Yeah.
Plus, it's cool looking, to be honest. I love it.
I think we should make this a thing for prescription availability. I don't know, because until it becomes legit, right?
Yeah.
That there's still the modern medicine is still there and it's legit, even though it failed so many people.
Doctors prescribe walking to the forest. I mean, even now, you can prescribe going to a gym.
That's what we need to do, guys. Okay, this is what I'm getting at.
So I want to warn against the prescription. You know, I don't like the idea of that. I like the idea of raising consciousness and making this something that's available to everyone. You know, that's accessible, but not necessarily where you have to get it from a doctor.
Yeah.
And prescription implies that, right? But prescription in another way.
Like if you were also
recommendation,
able to,
I want to just change the languaging around that a little bit. So we just say, you know, I suggest that you try this. It's recommended.
To your point as well, I think we need to look at the younger ages. We need to look at how we can integrate it into schools. We need to look at for children growing up that have only known technology at their fingertips 24 hours a day. That's the audience we need to be capturing. That's the audience we need to be speaking to and integrated in the school systems from a very young age. It should be in every classroom. Then it's not something that, you know, that as an adult you have to make that decision. It's just part of your life. The same way when you decide to give your child a phone, they already know that they are protected in some way because they've seen it in their classroom when they're working on their iPads or the laptops. So I think we need to really be focusing our attention on the younger generation and how to just integrate it into their everyday lives.
I can see the cartoon already, like a 5G dude and like Aries guy. How we can get along.
We're all parents of it, right?
I'm going to start talking about. We don't do it. You know, I think it's funny because my kids, we put it on their backpacks and it starts the conversation. What's that?
That's
you know, and no cell phone. You don't get one until you're 16.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Period. And I know that's the recommendation now.
People are already starting to.
When they come in, they say, should I give my kid a phone? Absolutely not. You know, they don't need it.
And you use the word wearable in the context of the Aries device.
Yes.
That was the first time I had heard that. I mean, I'm wearing one, but it's like when I think of wearable, I think of people who have like a ring or a...
Which has Wi-Fi.
Absolutely, but this is a great way to...
I love it. Anthony, I wanted to go back to you, right? So you've gone through so many transformations right before my eyes. Lost 125 pounds, then became a bodybuilder. That was a transition. And then finally transitioned into a full-fledged biohacker with peptides and everything. And now you've made it into your mission to actually bring wellness to the everyday person. But how can it be affordable for the everyday person? What are you advocating for on Biohack Yourself Media platform?
Well, I think first of all, it's advocating with your dollars, right? It starts with, okay, maybe I won't drink out of a plastic, or if I have the opportunity, maybe I won't, I'll bring my own a coffee mug to the coffee store, different things that you're already spending. Maybe you change your toilet paper. It's just, you don't have to radically change your spending habits, just be smarter with the education. In the case of Aries, you know, when you're wearing this, you already, it's mind over matter. You already feel like a shield. I know I feel that way. I feel kind of, if I forget it,
Like
I feel
placebo, right?
Yeah.
Could be also placebo.
You know, and there's studies on that too. I mean, placebo, nocebo. I mean, in either case, I feel like there are simple things that you can do to just prime your brain to say, no, this is how I want to live my life. It's really adopting that habit and that lifestyle, right? It's almost like saying, well, I was a smoker. You want to say, I'm not a smoker, right? So forget about the old you, adopt the new you. And then just bringing and incorporating those habits. And something like this is very simple. You just wear it, and it starts off in the morning, you put it on, and that sets the tone and sets the trend.
Yeah.
You mentioned this earlier. You just want to just go and train. The clothes, the food, the route you take, we're all creatures of habit. Make this a part of your habit, and it'll all start manifesting and coming together.
I couldn't agree more. You know, talking to your future self, right? It's like, you know, this is my intention. This is where I am. I like that.
Guys, I want to open the floor for any questions.
Does you been able to sleep with the accident?
Oh, yeah.
Saying that when you take off the sleep.
I don't take it off. The moment I saw my results, I'm not taking this off.
Yeah, I'll jump. Yeah, I'll answer that. So we do a lot of cool tests, and we really try to understand. And everyone's individual, right? Like just with everything, like we all have a different amount of toxicity that we're able to handle and process and get rid of, but sleep is the one that everybody probably struggles with, and it's not over just one solution either. It's like a combination. And again, really, if there's any one place that everybody should be thinking about, it is sleep. It's like foundational. No one denies, okay, sleep, nutrition, hydration, movement, that's like foundational. I think when it comes to Aries and we're talking about sleep and we're talking about thinking about the environment, the electromagnetic environment should be I think it should be on that list because it's ubiquitous. Like you can't opt out of it anymore. And so when you're thinking about sleep in particular, you're thinking about your blackout curtains, or if you're wearing a mask, or the temperature regulations that you have, like, and you're measuring it too. It's a known disruptor. So EMF is a known disruptor of all the different things, circadian rhythms, and it's already stressing your nervous system in all the different ways. And if you are hypersensitive, and it's actually shocking with the amount of tests that Dr. Dogris and I have done, in addition to what our company has done in a controlled clinical, there's nobody that's been resistant to just a simple exposure of minutes of a cell. There's nobody that's been resistant. So when you think about sleeping with the phone next to your bed, or your computer, your Wi-Fi router, all the your TV that's connected, and I will say, ironically, the fact that we have this giant screen behind
I know, I'm feeling it in the back of my head.
Yeah, like you feel. I think that's kind of funny, but the point is like, yes, people sleep with it. My recommendation is, I try to do, look, I'm the CEO of the company. I have access to more studies, and we have dozens that are published on our website, peer-reviewed, clinical, all that stuff. We have dozens more that are not on our website. And just because we've improved them or all for different reasons, we have lots and lots of studies. I just don't think there's enough things that you can do in our current environment. But Aries is a very simple thing that you can do, whether you have that larger one next to your bed or you wear it. I do believe, and we're working to get more studies, the one that you see people wearing around their neck that hangs a little closer to the heart seems to really have a very dramatic, fast effect. Now, again, I'm very cautious of what I say because Aries is a public company and I'm not a doctor. So I'm heavily regulated on the words that come out of my mouth. But I will say, in the observations that we have done, the closer it has been to someone's heart, the faster and more immediate the positive and beneficial effects are. So when I think about sleep, I tend to think I would encourage people to wear one regardless of their environment, because we do see the improvement over baseline, whether you're introducing a cell phone or some foreign, EMF producing device. or you know it's in your environment already. We know that there's a tuning effect in our observations, in our tests, that happens naturally with the body's own rhythms. So independent of the man-made frequencies, it will also help and tune your own body. And so to me, I always think of it as raising your baseline. You have the ability to raise your baseline to improve the starting point of health and wellness just by improving your body's own electromagnetic field. And that's really what Aries does. So starting from that point, it will, the sleep comes from that foundation. So yes, wear it. Or if you don't like to wear it, because not everyone likes necklaces or whatever, the closer to the body, you're gonna get the better effect. So that's maybe a long-winded answer.
Just wear it.
Yeah, while I'm talking though, I do want to brag about Sarah though, because I don't think she did a good enough job bragging about herself. Her vision for what they're doing is really, really cool. Just from the ground up, interacting with the local people to not even disrupt that community. It's thought everything that they're doing, and the inspiration of how do we bring that into our own communities and our own world. It's been inspirational. I mean, we've been talking to them for a little bit, and I was so excited when they said they would come join us because, and like I said, she didn't brag about herself, but I would encourage everyone to look into what they're working on in the Bahamas. It is really cool, and when she talked about just the disruption of the community of doing everything it possibly can to not disrupt the land, to not disrupt the flow of energy of the people. And I was really inspired, and I did walk away from the call when she shared that vision with me of how do I do that in my neighborhood? How do I do that it really was, it was meaningful. It left an impression on me. And like I said, so I wanted to make sure I bragged about her because she's not going to brag about herself. So I was really inspired by that. And then I also wanted to kind of talk about Michael a little bit too, because I think that people often ask us, Aries, why are you working with the UFC? Why are you working with an elite athlete like a Michael Chandler? And he's been such a good partner and an advocate, but our worlds collided because he aligns so much with our vision, which is he's seeking to improve himself through education, through trial and error, he shares it. And so it's better when I can educate him, he can see it for himself, he can do the work, and then he can then share that because he has another platform. But he's an elite athlete, he's an elite human. I mean, you see him in the octagon, he looks good. Let's just say that, right? Inspirational, right? And I am older, but not by much, and he looks far better than I do. And I look at the work that he does, and no one will ever question the work that he puts in. And I've seen that just in interacting with him and his understanding with what we do and our mission and vision. And to work with someone at that level that's looking for that incremental improvement, to then choose to say, I care about this thing that you guys are doing and I want to be a part of it. That's why we work with elite level athletes.
Sure.
And so what does that mean? If it's good enough for Michael Chandler, what does it mean for the average person that's just trying to get they're trying to get 5%, 10% better. I won't compare body fat percentage because it's probably going to be disgusting, but I'm not looking at single digit to get better. He's in single digits. So my point is I have a measurable amount of improvement that I can do as a normal person. So when he's thinking about these incremental things and he's selecting, something like this, that's meaningful. And so my hope is that by working with elite organizations, working with Sarah, working with Dr. Rubin, Dr. Dogris has been a great partner for us, and someone like a Michael Chandler, Biohack Yourself. This is about education, and it's about helping make it approachable, helping people understand that there's other people like them, which I think is another big one. Mm-hmm. How do you find your community? And how do you learn? How do you share? That's a huge part of what we do is we provide a ton of investment into education, and not about areas necessarily, but just informing people of you need to understand this. You make your decision. If you decide the areas is right for you or you just whatever it is, at least you're informed. Yeah. And so, anyways, I just want to share that. I want to brag a little about Sarah, about Michael, and they're awesome, and their missions are really important, and encourage anyone that sees this, hears this, can share it to kind of poke around and see what they're working on.
And I think to your point, it's so great that you guys are pivoting from the biohacking world into the UFC, into something more mainstream, because that's where majority of the eyeballs are, right? So the education starts with someone like you, who so many people look out for. So we're doing something similar with covering pickleball events, covering fashion week shows, covering a lot of other events other than the biohacking world so that we can actually push the message out to the masses. So you guys want to do a rapid fire real quick?
Sure.
Before we end? Okay. All right, Anthony, your favorite supplement ever?
My favorite supplement ever? I mean, right now I like Perfect Amino. I'm a big Perfect Amino fan. Yeah, and I like the H2 tabs. That's another one. Yeah.
Awesome. Your most favorite must-have biohack?
Oh, my red light bed.
Red light
Red
bed.
light bed.
I love it. One thing that has always worked with cancer patients.
Oh my God, listen.
Wow.
That's a big one.
That's
I just went like rapid fire.
how many hours do you have?
No, seriously, listening and caring.
Oh,
honestly.
listening. Okay.
Yeah,
See,
that's
there's
it.
always one thing that always
Yeah.
starts the healing. I knew it. Dr. Dogris, one biomarker that you cherish the most.
One biomarker that I cherish the most. The resonance of the heart.
what we need to
528
look out for.
hertz. You create that one and you're floating.
I love it. In the conscious environment that you create, Sarah, what's the one thing that you must put in?
Exposure to the natural environment.
Oh, I love it.
Nice.
And Josh, if we put our phones on airplane mode, does it work or not?
Yeah, we get that question a lot. Look, there's a lot of factors that go into that. I think airplane mode does create heat, which is a completely different thing than EMF, and that can be a problem for people. Look, I am really just a big proponent for lots of different reasons, the physiological, the psychological, to actually just shut it off, get it actually out of your pocket, get it away from you. Look, we're all guilty of it. Like, I don't have it on me right now, but I'm like, you have that sensation because you know which pocket you put it in. You have your habit. You're so programmed to just like, it's there, you feel it. So for me, I'm like, look, airplane mode, not airplane mode, shut it off, move it away.
Shut it off.
Let's just developing behaviors that detach you from it.
Yeah.
I think is becoming a new normal.
That's so important.
Yeah.
I mean, so what did you feel when you realized you didn't have it?
You know what? We all feel those little vibrations.
But what do you feel emotionally?
Oh, I'll tell you. I have been doing more like trying to understand the psychological rewiring of the brain of 72 hours, or how long is that period of time for me? Because I have a property that's kind of out in nature, like it's roughing it, and I love it. It's like my favorite thing. I spend a lot of time there. Like I'll probably go there after we're done, because it's just the place to just get back to nature and reset, and just not have to deal with the phone, the constant access, my anxiousness.
There it is. That's
Get
what
on it,
that's
like
what I'm shooting.
to check, like I missed something. You know, like what am I gonna miss?
And what's the root of anxiety?
I can't tell you. Like,
Fear.
I don't even know what it is.
It's fear. The root of anxiety is fear.
Yeah.
And so when we're reaching for that phone, what we're looking for, we're afraid. We need that. It becomes something that soothes you.
My
right?
consciousness is not having control.
Right. And so if we raise that awareness, like, whoa, let's go beyond the piece of phone.
Yeah.
But the fear that you experience when you don't have that, why?
Yeah.
Why aren't we asking that question? You know,
Yeah.
that's what I want to see.
To add what he's saying though, we talk about this all the time. The physiological versus the psychological. When it comes to the phone, both play a role, because you see it in the tests that your ability to regulate mood, you see the anxiety, all that from the EMF, you see that raised. So the nervous system is always fight or flight. It's always in that anxious mode.
Yeah.
And so then you feed it with a bunch of psychological social medias and the fear, like I'm missing out. I got to keep checking. I'm missing an email. I mean, waiting for an email, but I'm like, I feel like I'm missing one.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting, balance between the two of those things. I would just say when I notice myself having that behavior, that lack of control for me is really important. I don't like to ever feel like something is controlling me. And that's where I started, like, I got to go check out. I got to go spend time away. I got to put it away. I force myself, to just do that. You have to develop the behaviors.
Letting go of control.
Guys, thank you so much for your time. This was definitely valuable. right? You guys got some tips to start the EMF mitigation. I love that word.
Yeah.
So if you guys don't mind, let's take some red carpet pictures.
Yeah,
And then
and
we
by
can
the way,
wrap this
Dr.
up.
Dogris has a beautiful article. Please take your Gary Brecka and Dr. Daniel Amen. He has a beautiful article where he articulates a lot of the science.
And the Aries Tech is featured.
The
as well.
Aries Tech is featured, so please grab your copies.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Quick question. There was an air filter reference. Aries is filtering the EMFs in the room. It's no different than any other supplement. When you're buying your green juice, it's going to run out. You're going to have to purchase more. That air filter is going to get dirty. You're going to have to buy a new air filter. Is the Aries device, do you have to buy a new one? Is there an expiration date, or is it a one-time purchase and it's good as long as you don't break it?
That's a good
That's a
question.
great question.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that because it's common. I think it's common because people, they get the one on their phone and they stay on the phone, they get a new phone and they want to like be able to replace it, and you can switch it if you can get it to stick again. The answer is no. It's a one-time purchase and it isn't like an air filter, and it is modulating frequencies, and so filtering is a good way to describe it because it's simple. We understand that. We start using words like modulate, people break shut down. I don't listen to that. But the physics behind it are so you don't have to replace it. It will always work.
I think that was an important question.
Very.
Yeah, good question.
Thank you.
I've heard that one before.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Oh,
He's got a
Yeah.
question there.
Josh, you mentioned sleep being one of the most important things. I've been tracking my sleep the past week, just on ordering, and my REM sleep is garbage.
yeah.
So I got 3 minutes of REM sleep last night. What are things that stop REM sleep or limit REM sleep, and what things improve REM sleep?
Yeah, that's a good question. I will probably flip it over to the doctors on this one because they didn't answer that. But I will say the work that we've done, the sleep, whether it comes to hormone production or fertility issues or cancer, did not have sleep, becomes a compounding factor of all of those things, and then a flywheel that can't stop. And so I'm curious, though, more like from a scientific perspective, they're probably better to answer that question.
So I know both of us are going to have answers to this.
No.
And so what you eat is going to be a big part of this, right? Your emotional hygiene is a big part of this. How you take care of yourself, how you become aware of how you're thinking, how you approach problems in your world, how do you mitigate stress, how do you handle things, how do you become feeling full and present. Okay, those are very big pieces to look at, and when you don't manage your life in that way, you don't get exercise, you don't take care of yourself, your sleep cycles will be impacted significantly. And so if you're only getting 3 minutes of REM sleep, then there's something wrong. Okay, and that has to be examined and corrected. Now, from an emotional perspective, that's one. And I'm going to leave the other biological piece to you. But from a neurological perspective, we use electromagnetic, low intensity, slow wave electromagnetic that replicates what the body actually creates to help to increase blood flow in the brain. We can also introduce what's called cranioelectric stimulation. This is a way of being able to put the brain on a treadmill, if you will, and help it to achieve a parasympathetic state and take you out of sympathetic arousal. And so when you meditate in that way, then your body goes, oh yeah, I remember that. That's what I want to do. And it will go there. But you have to walk through the door.
Me? I think I want to answer this in terms of a story because I'm not a sleep expert, and we have a device at our clinic called EBOO. I think we were one of the first to get it, definitely in Arizona. It's called extracorporeal blood oxygenation and ozonation, where in an average 50-minute treatment span, we can process 2 liters of blood. And what we do is there's an out and an in, and you're taking blood out at a certain rate, and you're oxygenating it, and you're giving it ozone, and then you're passing it through 5 lights. One is a full spectrum light, and then there's 4 UV spectrums of light. Then you're returning it to the body on the inflow. And it's a cool device, and a lot goes on during that. And we now know, actually with the help of Gary, when he was at our clinic, he showed us a hack with it, that it's also, in some people, it is detoxifying. In fact, the most profound detoxification from metals, mycotoxins, and environmental toxicants, we're talking organophosphates, volatile organic compounds like we were all talking about, we actually can measure this in the blood waste. And most people have a little waste material that looks like urine, and we send it in. So we have proof of this. When we first got this machine a few years ago, and I think we have a video of it on our website, we had a patient who went through the treatment early on, and she looked at her tracker, and while she was up getting the treatment, it registered 35 minutes or so of REM sleep. And so what that said to me is that we took out and delivered to and made such great, enormous physiological change in her body in that 1 hour period, and it caused a relaxation and some type of physiological change that was read by her tracker, that she went through REM sleep. And so I just wanted to illustrate that in a story form, because there's so many things that go into it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.